On today's show, it's the Cleveland Cavaliers weekend recap, and we're going to look at some storylines that, you know what? We're kind of surprised. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. I'm Chris Manning from the Just Basketball Show, from Fear the Sword, from other places, Cleveland Magazine, and that man over there is Evan Dammarell, the proprietor of one right Down Euclid. We have a Cavs weekend recap for you. Segment 1, we're going to touch on Cavs Thunder, the home opener. Segment 2, Cavs Pacers, where Donovan Mitchell didn't play, Darius Garland didn't play, Jared Allen didn't play, Ty Jerome didn't play, and not surprisingly, the Cavs lost. In segment 3, we're going to play some small sample size theater and look at a storyline. We're each going to pick a storyline that we are surprised by, intrigued by, now that the season has kicked off. But to start with Cavs Thunder, Evan, go in chronological order. When you look back at that game, what was your big takeaway from that game?
More the fact that Darius Garland was I assume you would call it like a late game scratch, just because he was a questionable decision leading up to the game. But without Garland, there was no, at least for what the Cavs need, a traditional point guard on the roster. Sure, technically Craig Porter Jr. fits that mold, but he doesn't have the experience or I think understanding what the Cavs need at the point guard position, just because he's a rookie. And this is a very different team than what a rookie could be maybe capable of right away. But yeah, with Ricky Rubio out, focusing on prioritizing his mental health, and Garland out with this nagging hamstring issue, the Cavs were certainly hamstrung on offense. It's just the fact that Cleveland really went back to how they looked last year on offense. There was a lot of dribbling, a lot of isolation, a lot of like just last minute passes and simple passes and reads from Donovan Mitchell, Karis LeVert, Ty Jerome for a brief second as well too. Max Strus showed a lot of his playmaking chops as well in that game, and something that definitely showed in the following game against the Pacers as well. But it's just pretty clear that, like, if the Cavs don't have a point guard to kind of set the table and get everybody involved and kind of keep people moving, the Cavs are going to kind of fall back into those quote unquote habits from last year and not really embrace or install this new offensive approach that they're trying to work with.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same lines here. I think with Darius, you just saw with him being out how much he is responsible for the flow, how much Darius is responsible for things working on time, for the train, so to speak, moving in the right direction all the time. Darius, I think, is the structure. He is the flow. He is the one often pulling the strings. You can certainly, I think the Cavs did do this to some degree on Friday, take Donovan Mitchell, put a bunch of shooters around him, have a big man who can roll and do that stuff, and you can create good looks. I mean, the offensive rating on Friday, it wasn't gangbusters, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't a real problem. Cleaning the glass had them, well, okay, actually it was pretty bad. It was 101 point, I lied. I assumed it was better than it was. 101.1 offensive rating against Oklahoma City in that game. Scored 105 points, lost by 3. Played a good defensive game, but did not have a good offensive performance, even though Mitchell had a big night. And even though some guys perform well, you didn't have the same, I think, flow. And, I think through these 3 games on top of that, some of the Mobley as a hub stuff that we saw in the preseason hasn't exactly carried over one-to-one or been used at that volume that maybe we saw in the preseason.
I agree. I think it's more interesting just because when breaking down the offensive flow, Donovan Mitchell maybe played every minute but like 2 or 3 minutes in this game in the grand scheme of everything. But when he was on the floor, the Cavs were able to produce 95 of their 105 points. When he was off the floor, they only scored 10 points without him out there. Like, it's really hard to not even have a guard that can do, like, not obviously not the stuff Darius Garland can, but like Mitchell can at least be passable as a passer and as a lead guard in an offensive situation. I think we saw it a lot last year, and the Cavs were very reliant at times for Mitchell to bail them out in certain scenarios and things got tight. But this really crystallized the moment that you have some newer faces in like George Niang, Damian Jones, Ty Jerome. Jones and Jerome didn't play at all in the second half, but they did get minutes in the first half. And then Max Strus as well. And like, it's hard because like Garland, Allen as well, are just both such key players that it's hard to fully integrate and have an understanding of how this team functions. But yeah, like the offense wasn't great, and it did feel very samey to last year, where the Cavs leaned heavily on the strength of what got them to win so many games last year, which is their defense, and then the offense was at least slightly above average to kind of just meet the fit the bill at least. And that's what felt like the approach was against Oklahoma City. And then just some really ill-advised defensive lapses down the stretch that gave Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a ton of wide open opportunities from 3-point range, and then Shai just killed them for it.
Yeah, well, there is, if some of these defensive things, these issues continue, we'll have to kind of, I think there's maybe a conversation to have about the defense. The Cavs right now, the numbers don't look at them as a good team. There's also, I think, an Evan Mobley conversation to have. I want to save that, though, for segment 2, because one other thing, I think, came out of Friday. So people, I'm sure, saw Isaac Okoro get whomped in the face by Jalen Williams. I don't think it was a dirty play by any means, but he got hit in the face and was on the ground. So
it's tough in the grand scheme because it seemed excessive that, like, and we'll talk about it, but he technically did commit the foul because he was in the his derriere was in the restricted area.
This whole thing was weird. So then he's on the ground, play continues. And then Chet Holmgren, because the play continues, like kind of like ended up like almost, it looked like he almost stepped on Okoro's face, if not stepped on Okoro's like head directly, as Okoro's laying face down with his eyes covered on the ground because he got hit in the face. Okoro ends up wearing a mask for like 5 minutes on Saturday's game, and then he very pointedly like chucked it to Steve Spurrier, the Cavs head trainer, on the sidelines. JB Bickerstaff was asked about Okoro and the safety of continuing play, or in his mind, and I think correctly, not just stop playing that case. I'm gonna play that clip, and just so people can hear this, because I found this to just be, I found it outrageous for player safety that they didn't stop the game for Okoro in that moment where he's laying in the middle of the floor and like got stepped on. So here's what JB had to say about it before the game on Saturday.
It's a call that he had to make because of the way the rule stands, right? I do think that, and player safety is a priority. Like when you get a guy who's down on the floor, who's taking a shot to the head, you know what I mean? Like, I think it should be quicker that play is stopped. I don't think you have time as a referee to watch the game, evaluate, the amount of blood that's been spilled. Like, Isaac was bleeding from the nose. He couldn't see it because, he was laying down covering his face. I also think location matters, right? Like if, not that it's any less, but if he's in the back court and the play's been advanced forward, he's not in position where he could harm other players. Like if, they continue to play, which they did, and someone did land on him, now that player could also be injured, and he's defenseless and that guy's defenseless. So I do think it's something that they should act quicker on.
So again, I just found amid all the other things Friday, there are things that are more impactful in a basketball sense, Evan, in terms of long term and thinking about this team. But I just thought in like a very practical aspect, I just thought it was insane that play continued in the moment. I've been thinking about this since Friday, that this isn't like something you can just stop playing, have the ball inbounds from the side after like you get the guy who's on the ground in a heap out of the way.
I mean, the only way you can realistically do it is the Cavs call a timeout like immediately.
But no, the ref should just intercede and just we go.
Surprised it still is a thing. I think it's a little maybe uncommon to see these situations happen. But you and I were talking about this at Saturday's game. Like, I remember when Carmelo Anthony just like dropped to the floor and was passed out, and the Nuggets and Thunder were just kind of playing around him as he was sprawled out in the middle of in the lane. And it's just surprising to me that like that isn't just like such a small thing that hasn't been addressed up to this point. Because like you said, that it is a legitimate safety thing. Coro could have, because of the Holmgren thing, like could have gotten seriously hurt. Like I thought he was like out cold after that happened. So I'm just like, okay, like they are showing this from every angle. Like he took a nasty hit to the front of his face, and then like the stuff with Holmgren happened too. And like it was just hard to see it happen live, and then seeing the constant replay didn't make it easier either. And then like to your point, I'm surprised that the refs just like didn't like blow the play or just stopped. The refs have no problem stopping the game if there's a clock issue. They could easily blow their whistles and stop the game just to make sure the player can safely get off the court. So like Bickerstaff says, one, it doesn't further have any risk of injury for the player that has been affected. And also doesn't have like that possible domino effect where other guys could get hurt too, because there's somebody who is unable to get up. And these are large men at the peak of their physical abilities, moving very quickly on the floor. And like an inadvertent collision with like the knees or foot or legs could cause like, it could be a recipe for disaster. So yeah, like I said, like the refs have no problem stopping the game to fix the clock. It's like obviously not as like simple of a concept in terms of a player's safety, but like it should be viewed in that lens where like it's a no hesitation thing. Like you stop it, make sure everything's safe, and then you proceed.
All right, coming up next, Evan Mobley. He had a big game on Saturday, but I would argue there's still some concerns about the offensive profile right now. We'll talk about that and Cavs Pacers thoughts up next. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, which to me is the most fun way to play daily fantasy sports. You can win up to 25 times your money. You just pick two more players, pick more or less than their projected stats, and place your entry. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selections of players and stat types that make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. This football season, you could pick more Travis Kelce to have more than 50 yards in a game, or PJ Walker to throw maybe more than one touchdown, which would be good for the Browns on Sunday. And you're listening to this on Monday, maybe that worked out. You could look at NBA ones as well. And they offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts, like Taco Tuesday. Every Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. And PrizePicks offers Apple Pay now for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use our code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Pacers game, Evan. Here's where I would start with this. I think Evan Mobley had a good offensive game. You look at the raw scoring numbers. You look at some of the plays. I think there is reason to think that he has improved on offense to some degree. I think certainly he probably looks better on offense in a world where, you know, Garland and Mitchell are playing and there isn't so much on his shoulders. But I also do think, even with him being physical and going on Miles Turner and all this stuff, I think there's still clearly just some growing pains going on here. It wasn't as aggressive. It wasn't, even if it was more physical and was more aggressive than we've seen, I don't think this is the best apex like leap from on offense from Mobley that you might have hoped to see in year 3 so far. Am I being a hater?
I don't think you're being a hater, because people maybe point out to like Chet Holmgren splashing quite a few 3-pointers on the Cavs on Friday night, or the fact that he had 7 blocks, was 5 blocks away from tying Serge Ibaka's record for the Thunder with the most blocks in an individual game for a Thunder player. And like, you could say like, oh, that's the player maybe that Cavs fans think Evan Mobley can be, but isn't right now. But I think a better example right now is like the guy that was drafted immediately after Mobley and then the same draft class, Scotty Barnes. Like, Scotty Barnes is playing really, really well for the Raptors. I know they're only 3 games into the season, but second game of the year, he had a triple double, and then but he is having that two-way impact with maybe like the less impactful 3-point shot. Like, sure, Barnes is a little more trigger happy than Mobley is comparatively, but Barnes is so like heliocentric to the offense in Toronto. Like, he is scoring, he is rebounding, he's stealing the ball, he's blocking shots, he is creating opportunities for his teammates as well, because like the assist numbers are just like out of this world. Like, he is either double digits in terms of assists so far, or he is at least flirting with getting to that number. And when you look at Mobley, you're thinking like, okay, the scoring touch, sure, he was aggressive against the Pacers, and I don't think you're being a hater for this. Like, I think more so like the aggressiveness is a welcome sight. I think this is like encouraging to say like this maybe could be like the leveling up process of what Evan Mobley could be. But obviously, like, it's not as applicable because he has to share the floor with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Jared Allen, who will also demand touches and kind of lessen his scoring opportunities. But that's when the Cavs are fully healthy, of course. And like in this situation, was the only quote unquote star out there other than like Chris LeVert and Max Strus supporting him. But when you look at just how like Barnes plays and maybe how Toronto's offensive system is, I mean, it's a new situation with the new head coach and everything, but you just like look at Barnes, you wonder like, okay, why isn't Mobley maybe doing some more of that? Like, it is a copycat league, but like we talk about him initiating the offense and being more of like a playmaker and a passer. Like, we notice like the DHO stuff that he has going with Max Strus and like the high pick and roll stuff he has going with Max Strus is like a pretty effective wrinkle. I think it's going to be better with Garland too once they kind of build that on court rapport too. But I don't think you're being a hater necessarily. I think it's encouraging to see him have a game like this, but you wish you would just see more of it right away. And you wish that he was this dominant even when the Cavs are like fully healthy. Because, yeah, he does have the potential to be the best player on this team, second best player on this team, depending on how you feel about Darius Garland. But, like, it's just, are the Cavs too, like, basic in terms of schemes still on offense because of the lack of personnel? Or is Mobley still kind of figuring out what he is as a player on the offensive side of the ball?
I don't even know if I think it's like because I don't think he was like dominant in this game, and I don't think he has that say, like, in him in stretches.
I say more like physically imposing. Where like in the preseason, Miles Turner was kind of giving him fits at times, and then in this game, like
sure,
he lowered his shoulder and went at Miles Turner, which is, I mean, there's like a 20, almost 30-pound difference between the two, and Turner's just a big, thick player. Like for a guy like Mobley, like at least that's encouraging for him to not shy away from the physicality and maybe try to enforce some of his own on Indiana at time, or yeah, in this case, Indiana.
So here's what I would just say to kind of close this out. I think the thing with Mobley that shows up more when you don't have the two guys on the floor, and I think just shows up when you get to the biggest stages with him right now because of what we saw in the playoffs last year, I do just think he's lacking the offensive easy button. I think him getting aggressive and driving at centers is good. I do like when he brings the ball. I think that there's potential there. I think the Pacers, to their credit as well, cut him off in spots where there might have been passes when they were looking to get him going as a hub in little stretches. But I think I still don't think we know what Mobley's offensive easy button is, what Mobley's kind of defining look is. And he just, I look at this game, yes, he had a really good scoring night. Wasn't a great Cavs offensive performance overall. Like, they did enough and kind of muck their way to enough points. But he left some points on the table. Mobley left, he had 33. But I think just with some shots you kind of would hope he could make, that's a 40-point game. There's like a 40-point game on the table. And this is to just say, like, I think the ceiling is the roof, to quote Michael Jordan, for this guy. And I think for year 3, for this team to get where it's going to go, I think they just need more offensively from Mobley. I think it's pretty clear that if you're building out the best version of this team, it's going to require a bigger step than we've seen so far on offense from Mobley. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I agree, and I also just have to tell myself after being told this by Max Strus, the Cavs only 3 games into the season. It's going to be a constantly dynamic and ever evolving thing, but I don't want to say it's not like an immediate year 3 leap that like some like maybe people were kind of maybe hoping to see some signs of heading into this year. But like you said, like a 40-point game was on the table in this one, but there are just some limitations and things that Mobley still needs to kind of figure out. And the coaching staff kind of needs to find ways to empower him to like read and react to how defenses are shutting things off for him, just to kind of ensure that that this doesn't really become like a recurring thing for them.
All right, let's end that there. Coming up next, surprising early season storylines. We'll dive into that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. That's the official sportsbook of Locked On. And score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And again, the official sportsbook of Locked On. All right, 3 games into the season. All that said, Evan, let's have a little fun. Let's look at some early season storylines. My surprise one is that Isaac Okoro has, I think, been pretty darn good through these couple games. Isaac Okoro has been a two-way player, a two-way wing, who is defending well, who is shooting well from 3, who is taking a career high number of 3s per game, who is cutting, who is getting into space, who is getting rebounds in a way that we have not seen from him before, in a way that I think that adds utility to his game. I have just been so impressed with Okoro. And look, he's got to keep it up. It's something it can't just be based on these first couple games and he gets there. But this is a guy that has earned himself minutes and earned himself, I think, it's a contract year for him. It's going to earn himself a good opportunity to earn some money, perhaps next summer, getting a new deal from the Cavs. Like this is like the perfect Okoro start to me in a lot of ways.
It really is. And I'm trying to see, it may have been the last preseason game in Indianapolis where I'm just checking his stat line. So Isaac Okoro finished. No, that's not the game I was thinking of. I think it was the game against the Magic instead. My apologies. Also wasn't that one.
Why you're looking?
This is Okoro to start the season has been playing very complete basketball. Like you said, he's been a two-way player. He hasn't been shy about taking 3-pointers. This game against the Pacers notwithstanding, because he didn't take a single one, but like he's taking them at a healthy enough clip. And I think I asked him this during camp, and it was against the Hawks when this happened, when he had 19 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds, sorry. And so it's just like, that is like the apex of what Isaac Okoro can give you. And then it was the Magic game I was thinking of, where he gives you a little bit of everything in terms of like scoring. So it's like 8-9 points and the absolute cap of like 12 to 15 max. He gives you some assists. He gives you a lot of he gives you rebounds, and just like he takes advantage and maybe bringing the ball up or just helping lead fast break scenarios. Obviously steals. I think the fact that he is very comfortable defending 1-4, and I think the Cavs utilizing him as a small ball 4, or maybe in certain lineups like on offense, George Niang is 3, Okoro's the 4, and then they flip the script on the defensive side of the ball, or like Max Strus is the 3, Okoro's the 4, and Okoro just kind of stays at that 4 spot at times as well. So yeah, Okoro's played really, really well, and I think he certainly is making a strong statement to start the season to say like, hey, it was reported by Chris Fedor that Okoro was looking for something similar to what Josh Green got with the Dallas Mavericks. So maybe like that's still in the realm of possibility when like extension talks resume or something comes to the table.
It have to be next summer.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was getting to, is like when next summer, when these talks can start back up again, like, yeah, that could be in the realm of a possibility if Okoro keeps this up, or he could also get a bit more of a lucrative payday with the Cavs or another team. And we'll see, obviously, how that goes. Across that bridge when we come to it. But he's been super effective starting in all 3 games for Cleveland. I'm interested to see if that translates to when he likely starts coming off the bench when this team is fully healthy. But I asked him, did that injury that you suffered in that Rockets game after the game winner in Brooklyn have an effect on momentum? And he said, I don't view it that way. He said, I was just rusty and maybe not in the best shape when I came back for the postseason. But you and I both believe at least that, hey, there was a little bit of a momentum thing. And Okoro is a guy where, if he finds consistency within his role and finds consistency within the offense and on defense as well, it's easy for him to just kind of find ways he can fit in because there aren't any set plays called for him. He is playing within the flow of the offense and benefiting from maybe the defensive attention his teammates are getting. And yeah, he's really making the most of the opportunities. Contract year Okoro, and Okoro unmasked, even better, is been the at least early season MVP for the Cavs so far.
Yeah, Josh Green's...
yeah, go ahead. I'd say it's either him or Max Strus have been the 2 most impactful players through the first 3 games for the Cavs.
Yeah, I think I would lean Strus, but just for context, Josh Green's contract, he got a 3-year, $41 million extension that'll pay him 12.6, 13.6, and then 14.6. That's the ongoing mid-level money as you go forward. I think I would love to know now what the Cavs offer was, because that doesn't seem insane to me if you would just signed him for it. Now, the other thing that I would say is related to Max Strus, Evan, for as far as storylines go. He's just been a really effective rebounder, and he's crashing in from the outside. This is not someone who, on the scouting report, you look at his rebounds and say, yeah, that's a great rebounder. I don't think he's going to average 9-10 rebounds a game the whole year, but he averaged 3.2 last year. If he's at 5 and 6, and the Cavs with him and Okoro and other guys are having them make a conscious decision to crash and maybe shore up some of the issues they had, I think that's a net positive and tells us something about what the Cavs are doing as far as rebounding from the wing goes.
Yeah, and he was asked about this after the Pacers game in terms of just him kind of gobbling up some boards every single game. He just said it's kind of just a product of the fact that Evan Mobley is kind of commanding so much attention defending the rim that he just happens to be the guard who sneaks in. It reminded me of when he said it, oh yeah, it's kind of how Josh Hart doesn't have a full explanation of how he can do it. He just happens to be in the right place at the right time. And I think Strus is just that dude who can make a lot of just really smart reads and plays. And I think for me, the most impressive thing with Strus so far is just the passing. I think the 2-man game between him and Mobley is going to be something I keep an eye on all season long. It's been a lot of fun just to kind of watch the evolution so far, especially after Strus did make it known that he texted the Cavs saying hey, could you start clipping some footage of how Bam Adebayo and myself as in Max Strus worked together in Miami, and so Evan can kind of study a little bit of it to have an understanding of how we can get the ball running or hit the ground running here. And so Strus has been fun, but I think it's just the playmaking stuff too. I think he has a good understanding and just good feel for the game in general. He's making all the right passes and all the right plays. And there's going to be nights the night against Oklahoma City where the shot maybe isn't falling, at least comparatively to the season opener in Brooklyn. But he was still impactful, whether it was rebounding or just keeping the ball moving and kind of being one of those secondary creators. Karis LeVert told me he's other than LeVert, Garland, Mitchell, having a guy in that kind of 1 or 2, 3 spot Strus is, and just kind of being an extra playmaker, a guy who can make those reads and the right passes. It does make life easier for everybody else on the team just to kind of keep the ball moving, especially with the Cavs wanting to utilize so much movement within their system.
We're going to end there. I am Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always, for production. Back at you tomorrow, previewing Cavs-Knicks, first of 2. Talk to y'all then. Have a great Monday, everyone.